Alrighty, let's get this thing started. Well, hello everyone. My name is Jackson Webster, and I have the privilege of hosting the 5th annual To Know Launch Conference sponsored by the To Know community. Now, it looks a little different than it has in years past. Usually we're at Glen Oaks face-to-face with all of you with a room full of about 100 people, but as we've all know and experienced, 2020 has turned all of our plans upside down. Our world looks a lot different than it did 6 months ago when the pandemic started. You know, the country went on lockdown, the economy tanked, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and it seems as if everything we have relied on in the past has been canceled or postponed. Now, we didn't want that to be true of launch. We wanted to be able to pivot and still host this event, even though it looks a lot different than it has in years past. As you all know, for those of you who have come to the To Know conference before, for the past 5 years, we've gathered to discuss new ideas, rub shoulders with businesses from a variety of industries, and foster purposeful relationships. It's a yearly event that attendees can rely on. So while, again, it looks a little bit different this year, we wanted to remain consistent as best as we could in light of this current environment. Now, the idea of the To Know community began just about 6 years ago with a shared vision, a vision that would see a community of people be united in relationship and awareness. Through a partnership between Benefit Source Inc. and One Body 3, the To Know community was created with the purpose of to know and to be known. Now, this has been our mantra since the conception of the community, and it will continue to guide us as we venture forward. If you're new to the community, I just want to give you a quick flyover of the two organizations so you know who you're dealing with here. Benefit Source has been implementing and designing benefit programs for employers for the better part of the last 40 years. Our values of loyalty, innovation, and excellent customer service has given Benefit Source the opportunity to work with employers of all types. From small mom and pop shops to large manufacturing companies, we have a well-diversified client base that gives us an expertise within the complex environment of healthcare. Now, One Body 3 has been working with organizations and individuals for over the past 10 years to connect them to their purpose. Through the discovery of purpose and the power of transformational change, One Body 3 programs are the catalyst to creating healthy cultures and purposeful corporate environments. Now, we're really excited here at BSI and One Body 3 because we get to work with each other every day, and we see the beautiful marriage of the two companies, and we believe in its purpose, which was the purpose of the To Know community. And we're excited for you guys to join today. You know, we've been saying for years that change is constant and unpredictable. And if 2020 has proven anything, it's proven that concept. COVID-19 has caused us to reevaluate and pivot in almost every part of life. Now, whether we've had to implement new employee policies, learn how to use this confusing app called Zoom, or try and coordinate a group project while working from home, we're all in the same boat. COVID-19 has changed the way we do business. One of the most difficult challenges that we've seen employers face over the last 6 months, even before COVID, is how to effectively communicate with their employees. You know, while widespread communication has never been so easily accessible in this day and age, clear and effective communication is difficult to master. We recognize this is especially true when trying to convey benefits to a population of employees. You know, at Benefit Source, we strive to produce consumer comprehension by simplifying complex benefit concepts. And this is why when we ran into Jennon Caruth from Clarity Enrollment Solutions, we knew that we had found an outstanding partnership. Jennon is the co-founder and principal of Clarity Enrollment Solutions based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's originally from Jewell, Iowa, just north of Ames, and a graduate of Iowa State. Come on, Cyclones, let's see if we can pick it up this weekend. He currently resides in Chanhassen, Minnesota with his wife, Beth, and 2 sons, Cooper and Drew. Benefit Source and myself were introduced to Jennon and Clarity about 3 years ago. It has been a beautiful partnership since. I think Jennon would agree. Our shared values of relationship and providing excellent service are why it makes it so easy and enjoyable to work alongside Clarity. Now, we've introduced Clarity before, but I don't necessarily want to steal all of his thunder. So, Jennon, welcome to the To Know conference.
Thanks, Jackson.
Absolutely, absolutely. How you doing, man? How's Minnesota? Is it too cold up there? What's going on?
Well, I'm actually in Chattanooga, Tennessee today. Right. I'm going to be flying back home to Minnesota, but made a trip down to Chattanooga for a new location that we recently acquired, and just kind of dabbling in this market and getting to know the community down here. So.
Well, awesome. I think I'm going to ask you a little bit about that later.
Sure.
But thanks for joining us this morning, Jen. And I know that, we talk frequently, our agencies talk frequently, but we really wanted to give our client base and really the relationships that we have an introduction to you and your organization, because we really believe in the work that you're doing and think it matches really well with the To Know community. So thanks for joining. What do you say we get right into it?
Let's do it.
All righty. So like I said, I know you pretty well, but I'd love for you to give our audience a bit of insight into who you are, how long you've been in the industry, and kind of who Clarity is.
Sure. So as Jackson mentioned, again, my name is Jennon Caruth. I'm one of the principals and founders of Clarity Enrollment Solutions. Based in the Twin Cities, we're really a focused communication, engagement, and benefits enrollment organization. That's really the foundation of Clarity. Our goal is to provide communication and engagement down to the employee level to make sure that employees feel strong and secure about the benefit choices that they make. We work exclusively through insurance brokers, similar to Benefit Source. And the reason we do that is, they have a better understanding of their client base, of the benefit challenges, of healthcare challenges that you all are dealing with, rising costs of healthcare, all those things. So our goal is, again, to work with the brokerage community, understand their clients who have not just benefit challenges, but communication challenges, technology challenges, and really help streamline open enrollment and drive engagement with the employee population.
Well, that was a pretty good summary. I wish I could be able to describe you guys that quickly and that effectively, but you guys are a communication company, so
yeah, exactly.
Good job. So tell me how Clarity came into fruition. What kind of sparked your idea to found this new enrollment solutions company, and what were some of the needs of employers that you were seeing that you thought that you'd be able to help mitigate as this new company?
Yeah, so it's a big question. Prior to starting Clarity in 2014, I worked on the wholesale insurance carrier side. So I worked for a carrier called Unum. And over my 10 plus years at Unum, what I had started to see on the ancillary benefits side was really a shift from employer-sponsored benefits to more voluntary benefit strategies. And again, that's directly related to rising cost of healthcare. Companies had to cut costs in certain areas. So we saw this shift to voluntary benefits, not only at Unum, but we saw more and more companies even getting into the voluntary benefits space. So what myself and my business partner, Guy Morissette, what we started to identify was with the shift to voluntary, with the shift to more and more choice with employees, brokers and employers more than ever, we felt needed a resource and an expert really specifically in the voluntary benefits space to help make decisions, to help be experts with how these benefits fit in, and then ultimately help employees with all of these new choices. Choice is great. Employers have to offer choice. It's really important for recruiting and retention of employees. But with choice, also there's confusion. So anytime employees have a menu of 10 to 12 benefits, it can be very overwhelming. We saw that, and we really identified that need to be able, again, to provide that communication down to the employee level.
Sure. It seems like HR departments and really the HR director is typically looked at as the benefit expert at an employer group. And sometimes that's a little overwhelming even for HR departments. So in light of an HR department, what are some of the tangible services that you help HR departments with? What do you do for them? What makes you guys so valuable to bring into a human resources department?
Yeah, another big question, right? There's a lot of layers to that question.
Heavy hitting this morning.
Yeah. So, I think as we talk with HR departments, our biggest goal is to help them streamline open enrollment. That's a huge project for HR departments every year. What we've recognized and what we saw, this has been probably for the last 15 years, HR departments are shrinking.
Sure.
And what that means is the one, maybe two HR people for small to large organizations are in charge of doing more and more things, from, again, recruiting, onboarding, and now you've got to be the benefit expert. You need to be the payroll expert. We feel like if we can help streamline and take a heavy burden off of their plate, not replace, but really streamline and work in conjunction with HR for open enrollment, it's really, again, can take that huge burden off their plate. And how we do that, we work with them to communicate to their employee population. What I always say is we kind of take the role of insurance advisor off that HR person's plate.
Right.
If an employee, a new hire, open enrollment, if an employee comes to the HR person because they have an upcoming surgery, they have, financial issues. These maybe are scenarios that the employee might not be comfortable communicating with HR. Having a third-party resource, a licensed insurance professional to be able to have that non-biased conversation with, there's a ton of benefit in being able to do that for those employees. And our team, they're licensed resources to be able to advise and really help guide employees, their spouses, their families to the right decisions when it comes to their benefits.
Sure. So you've kind of given an overview of the specific services which we're really familiar with here at Benefit Source. But let's say we have a client listening and it's September 24th, which means that January 1st renewals are right around the corner. They're going to be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. Let's say one of our clients come to us and says, hey, we want to really utilize this enrollment service. What can said client expect as a partnership between the three organizations? And what is it that you guys are actually going to do for each one of those employees? And what kind of high level does it look like from start, conception of the partnership to completion of the project?
Yeah, so any new potential client or prospect, we would have what I'd call a discovery call, where we want to try to understand your benefits, your initiatives for open enrollment, what you want to communicate and convey to employees. Our ultimate goal is to be that communication on behalf of the broker and HR department. So we're going to try to understand, again, what you're trying to accomplish for open enrollment. That might be you're rolling out an HSA plan and you need a ton of communication down to the employee level. Maybe, again, it's rolling out a voluntary benefits strategy. It might be something like you're rolling out a new technology platform,
right,
and employees maybe aren't tech savvy. So having, again, a team that can help onboard employees into a tech enrollment platform, that's a service we provide frequently. So that discovery call is really important because no client is the same. We've probably done, since 2014, close to 300 enrollments.
Wow.
And every single enrollment provides or presents, unique challenges, unique opportunity to provide solutions. There's obviously common themes with each employer group we work with, but every single group we work with, hear what your unique challenges are to be able to really customize the service to your needs down to the employee level.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. And I totally echo what you said. We've implemented quite a few cases with you guys over the past couple of years, and every case has looked different. Every case has required different work from us, different work from you guys. We've had to coordinate a bunch of different confusing schedules, and I really appreciate the way that you guys get ahead of it, and you guys really do. I mean, you ask a lot of questions, but the questions are good, and the questions are what help provide an excellent service. But like I said, we've implemented with a couple of several employers, some of our larger clients over the last couple of years, and we've been very, very pleased with the outcome. What's even better is through the partnership with you guys and BSI, we've been able to provide it at no cost to the employer, which is a great, great benefit. Whether that's through the meetings that you're doing with all the employees or the technology that you leave behind and help with the HR departments, you guys really are an incredibly valuable service to bring to our employers. So again, thank you for your partnership. We're really thankful for you guys. As I had mentioned earlier in kind of my introduction, COVID-19 has really made every business pivot in the way that they do. They just go about their regular day. What have you guys had to do to change kind of your business structure, or were you prepared for it at all? And what are some of the things that you're doing now to help mitigate that risk of COVID?
I don't know that anybody can truly prepare for a pandemic.
Right.
I don't know that any business was, had that in their business planning strategies.
Right.
But I do think our organization and our business had a unique structure and really a unique opportunity to provide that historically has been needed even when there wasn't a pandemic. But I would say, based on our results and our business growth in 2020, it's clear that the service we're providing is more needed when there are stressful times. And really what I mean by that is communication to employees right now and engagement is more important than ever. Companies are trying to find ways to make their employees feel the love, right? I mean,
Right.
feel engaged and feel important. And I can tell you, we're talking on our benefit calls more about things like employee assistance programs. How can employees deal with mental, financial, emotional stress at an all-time high? I can tell you personally, our family deals with a lot of stress with schooling, and I mean, everything you can think of right now. Families across the country are at a higher stress level than probably the history of the United States. So
Right.
Being able to relay that information to employees and let them know that they have outlets and resources, and let them know that their employer cares about, their protection. Insurance is sometimes people don't want to think about insurance. It's like taxes. It's kind of a necessary evil.
Right.
But it is so important, and we're starting to sense that connection with people that they have a need for financial protection right now. Our business really, the one way that we shifted kind of pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, prior to COVID-19, most of the actual benefit sessions that we hosted were face-to-face. I would say probably 70% of our enrollments that we would conduct would be on-site, face-to-face with employees. Obviously, with COVID-19, we had to shift to 100% telephonic. And what that's done is actually created a really nice, efficient process.
Right.
And it was a process that we actually had in place prior to COVID. We just had to kind of pour gas on the fire with our structure of our telephonic enrollment. But I can tell you, with the process we have in place, all of our calls are recorded. We actually make outbound calls to employees during a very specifically scheduled time. So it's a very structured process, and it works extremely well. If there's ever a discrepancy on a call, we have the ability to listen to those recordings. It's a really streamlined, very transparent process. And I see us shifting to more of a telephonic strategy. Sure. Even if COVID-19 lightens up. It really eliminates a lot of some of the logistical challenges that are presented with some groups that we've worked with when you can do everything over the 30-minute environment. Tends to be less disruptive for companies as well. And I think there's some value in that too. So.
Well, I first want to make a note of what you said at the beginning of that answer, which you were talking about the social and emotional well-being of employees. It seems like it's at an all-time high, and we totally agree with you on that. We've been seeing that trend for really the last 10 years. About 10 years ago, when One Body 3 started, I hear stories from the Jens, which they're about to speak here in just a couple minutes. But they talk about how they go into boardrooms and get laughed out of the room when they talk about the social and emotional well-being of employees, because at that point, it really was all about financial protection and financial well-being. And it seemed like culture was fine without having to worry about the social and emotional well-being. But as the years have gone by, and suicide rate has skyrocketed, depression rates have skyrocketed, and now COVID-19 is introduced, and now we're lonely, and all of these things are going through the roof. There's nothing that's more important than communicating that an employer cares about its employees and that it helps provide those resources. And so even the fact that you were able to speak to that and that you guys are helping employers do that in a time where a lot of employers don't get to see their employees face to face, I think it's going to make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, because that stuff matters. And then at the same time, there's not very many businesses that necessarily had a business plan set in place before COVID that they didn't know was going to help them succeed through COVID. So it's really cool to be able to see that somebody like you guys were able to pivot and, like you said, kind of just pour gas on the fire. I mean, you probably had to ramp that up just full speed ahead as soon as March hit. And I think we've done 2 or 3 enrollments since COVID with you guys, and it's been incredible. It's soared through the roof. It's been really good, and we haven't heard anything but high praise. So you guys are doing a good job. So you had mentioned earlier you're in Chattanooga right now. You guys have grown quite a bit over the past couple of years. So my next question is kind of about how have you guys been able to stay consistent in your service through this time of growth, and at the same time present new innovative ideas to your clients? And how are you continuing to look forward to what's next all at the same time? I know that's another big question, but you've been handling it well.
I would tell you, and my nature is a salesperson. So I am not a process-oriented person by nature. My business partner, fortunately, is a very, very much a process-oriented person. And I would tell you early on in our relationship, it drove me nuts. But I can tell you the fact that we have a very detailed process for everything we do has been such an important aspect of our business, and really has allowed us to grow because we stick to our process and our process works. It allows us to bring on new employees and bring them on quickly and efficiently, and really allows them to understand the process quickly. And it allows us to, I think, build for the future, because we know that our structure and our foundation and our process is well established. Externally, you as a broker and clients, they don't necessarily see the internal workings of Clarity with their project management tools, with their implementation tools, with all of the layers and details that go into our process. But I can tell you that structure, foundational process is really what it's to me. It's been the biggest kind of eye-opening experience in starting and growing a business, how important it is to have consistent processes in place, because that's one less thing you have to worry about. Absolutely. When you do have a unique scenario or a unique situation. It's trust the process. It might sound a little cheesy, but it really is such an important aspect of our business. Growing into a new market in Chattanooga, where I am, have been this week, we've brought on a few employees that had a very different process. And our goal is not to be disruptive and our goal is to have a smooth transition with this location, but we also need them to learn our process. And that's been a very big kind of feature and a big kind of overall theme with our new employees. This is going to be change for you, but trust the change and trust the process. So, and it's been great having kind of that smooth transition. It's only been a month, but the two employees that we've acquired down at this location are really buying into the process and seeing the structure and seeing the value of having that structured process.
Well, I'm sure that you're going to continue to have opportunities to learn, because this service is only going to grow in need and value as we move forward. So I feel like you're going to have a lot more opportunities to expand, which will create those opportunities in order to change and to learn how to integrate with other businesses and have them learn the processes at the same time. So that's really awesome, Jen, and I'm excited for you guys. I'll close with this question. In the To Know community, we often define purpose as if your organization were to no longer exist, what would be missing? I know we talked a little bit about this last week, so I've given you some time to think. But so Jennon, if Clarity Enrollment Solutions were to no longer exist, what would be missing?
Yeah, this is the biggest question, and I've stewed on this question for a good week. And really, I mean, purpose is such an important aspect of work for me, because if you don't feel like you have purpose in what you do on a day-to-day basis, why are you doing it, right?
Right.
So if clarity were to no longer exist, I mean, the obvious things, anybody can come up with a communication and enrollment company, right? It's not a truly unique scenario, but or a truly unique business, but if it were to no longer exist, to me, it's the purpose in what we're doing. If that no longer exists, the employee communication piece and the engagement, the emotional side of things, the communication side of things, it's such an important element in our society today to be able to communicate effectively.
Right.
And without that, I think it's a huge kind of just missing piece. It would be a missing piece in my life, because I have, again, when I go to work on a daily basis, my purpose, I understand what that is. And for that to be gone, it would be it'd be challenging for sure.
Be pretty detrimental, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Jennon, I thank you so much for joining today. I wish that I could look out in the room and see everybody's smiling faces as they clap for you, but I'm assuming that they're clapping for you from their desk. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate our partnership with you, and looking forward to the partnership for years to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And thanks, everybody, for attending today. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, Jennon.
Great.
So we're going to move right along. It's my pleasure to introduce you guys to the co-founders of the Tonneau community, Jennifer Browne and Jennifer Webster, or the Jens for short. If you've been to Tonneau community events before, you are no stranger to the great dynamic of these two. I love them dearly. But I'm going to give you a short introduction to the both of them for those of you who have not met them before. Jen Browne, who is on the left of your screen, is the president of Benefit Source Inc. and the co-founder of One Body 3. She might kill me for saying this, but she has been in the business for almost 30 years, owning Benefit Source for 15 of those years, and helping lead One Body 3 for 12. She always says that at every event, so I thought I'd say it for her this time. Jen Webster on the right there is the co-founder of One Body 3 and brings over 25 years of teaching and coaching experience to the table. They're a great team, and I'm very excited for you guys to be able to sit under their teaching yet again during this event. So without further ado, I present to you the Jens.
Thank you, Jackson. Yes, it's always difficult to hear that number, but I'm going to take pride in that number, because I have to shift my mindset in this as I get to be a little bit older. I think to myself, well, there's wisdom in that number. So I hope, I hope that's the case.
Go ahead and tell yourself.
I know. One, I want to just thank Jennon just for the fabulous job that he did, and Jackson he really couldn't have set us up any greater for today. As I was listening to the presentation, I was thinking about actually the time that I started my career, and I was a little bit younger than Jackson because I had to work my way through college. But I was thinking to myself, 30 years ago, one of the things that I loved about the business was to sit across the table from a user, sit across the table from an employee, and knowing that I was having an impact, of course, not knowing necessarily my purpose at that time, but now that I do know it, providing hope for the person that was across the table, and just the importance of that role, and to see that vision or that come full circle. That was something that I was just adamant that we did 30 years ago. And I would spend hours. I remember one of the jobs I had was in the basement of the vet hospital, and I met with people that barely could scrape money together but had life insurance needs. And I just remember that so powerfully even today. And so to be able to do that at such a scale, and then also, as Jackson mentioned, knowing that social and emotional well-being, this whole body well-being, that includes both outside factors and inside factors is so important to the health of who we are. And when we're battling healthcare costs, we're not just battling those outside forces, we're battling those inside forces and being able to meet people where they are and to provide a sense of security and a sense of, and really it's a derivative of risk. It's a security that comes in knowing that they're heard and knowing that there is a way that they can be led to an inside healing as well, or that social and emotional well-being. Just really, really exciting work. I can't say enough wonderful things about Jennon.
Yes, and to think that Jen, in 10 years, like Jackson said, when we first started this, and we would be laughed out of a boardroom when we talked about purpose and culture.
We have thick skin.
Yeah, I think we do. But to get to this place now where we're talking about community-wide health, social and emotional health, and putting the we part of this formula into play. And so to think of partners that we have like Clarity, that are very focused, and their purpose being around the communication piece of this, that without them we wouldn't have that powerful communication. And so it matches us so well, right, at Benefit Sources One Body 3, because we believe so strongly in relationships and the power of relationships. So to have a partner like Clarity in this with communication is so good to present to all of you today at the To Know community.
And for the outcome of engagement. And so look for us, we're working really hard to take that one-on-one experience that would be available through Clarity and to bring One Body 3 into that experience. And so Jennon, we've already had some conversations with him about how we can do that, how we can meet people in that one-on-one and do a check-in on their purpose in that space as well. So more to come on that, but we're super excited about that.
Yeah, so but this smoothly transitions us right into our topic for today, which is building community in a cancel culture. We are right now, Jen and I kind of put some conditions together, and we're going to say some of them. She's going to be more business oriented. I'm going to be more worldview. But let's think about what we've got in our current cultural conditions right now that are causing us some challenges in building community, right? So we've got masks, no masks. We've got, hybrid school. We've got virtual school. I mean, we could add all kinds of schooling options in there, right? We have police. We have defund the police. We have, what are some of the other ones? We have Democrat, Republican. I mean, that's a real easy one. We have definitely polarized types of options around current race conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Will I sign up for the vaccination? Will I not sign up for the vaccination? One I heard yesterday that I didn't even know existed, but that the coronavirus never existed. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting concept. So just all kinds of different things that could really drive us. And then let's go to some of the things that can show up at work. Do we have our executive leadership meeting in person, or do we have it on Zoom? If somebody doesn't feel good, do we allow them to come in if they don't have a fever? Or do we require them to have a fever before we force them not to come in? I mean, and you could go on and on.
Goodness, we could talk about all kinds of the nightmares, right? Do we bring in 50% of our population one week, switch them out, bring in 50% the other week? So again, like Jackson and Jennon said earlier, nobody would have anticipated that we would be in a time as we are right now. And we really believe that there are two cultural conditions that we're talking about when we talk about that challenge to community and building community. One of them is that polarizing culture. We right from the start, we're telling you bookends, if you will, or polar opposites. And what that means, this polarizing culture, is that as a group of people, we are to pick either one side or the other. And we have lost neutral. We have lost that continuum of neutral. So do I pick mask or no mask? There's no neutral in that. And that one would be kind of hard to discover a neutral in, but, but the polarizing, we're picking polar opposites of each other, and we're asking people to line up on that.
And typically when we find ourselves in situations where that happens, it's because our security has been rocked. Okay, so what it means is that people are really struggling and working hard towards trying to create some security. So what we're finding is that it's easier to go left or right and pick one side over the other because it provides us in this ever-changing place that we find ourselves in. We believe it provides us security, but what it actually does is it polarizes us. It actually creates a divide amongst us.
Jennon said earlier that, we offer a lot of choices in insurance plans now, but when we think about all those choices can bring about confusion. And so again, to that security comment, Jen, I think about if there are too many choices, what becomes really popular in our current culture conditions is let's just narrow those down and offer two. Okay, and they're polar opposites of one another, and that really shuts down that diversity of thought that we have when we're building community and allowing us to get the value out of all thoughts and all beliefs. So the other culture condition that we see right now is what we call the cancel culture,
which the polarizing leads to the cancel
right.
culture.
So one really feeds the other, and the cancel culture says that it doesn't matter how long I've had a relationship with you,
how long I've worked for you,
how long I've trusted you,
right?
Okay.
Right.
If I don't believe in something you say, I just cancel you out. I defriend you. I'm just done. I don't connect anymore. And
I've lost respect.
Yes.
There's all kinds of things.
And typically in that cancel culture, we don't give anybody any explanation either. It's just done. And in the world that we live in right now, where we are more virtual than we are in person, that becomes a lot easier. We have been hearing people talk about, most of our leaders talking about the grief they felt when there have been employee changes during this time. And part of them grieves that loss, but the other part of them has said, well, you know what, it's just a tidbit easier when I'm not face to face with somebody. So that cancel culture is just becoming more prevalent.
Well, and what's happening too, I know that what I've learned in the coaching that I've had with leaders most recently is that leaders are under so much stress because of that cancel culture and the idea that they don't want to be responsible for making a mistake, that it's actually paralyzing them. It's causing them not to make decisions because that cancel culture is so prevalent. And so it also, I found myself coaching people through that process of it's better to make a decision and create communication and have tools that help people to work through that than to not make a decision at all. And so that cancel culture is really causing leaders to struggle with what to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Jen, because again, cancel culture can look like somebody just disappearing, right? But it can also be a lack of communication altogether. So we're not telling and communicating with our cultures, our communities, what is really going on. And that's really where the struggle is happening, right? Where we have change.
Right.
And that change has become constant.
Yeah.
And we are, like they said earlier today, we're in a stressed worldwide. We're in stress. Communication becomes the key. In a cancel culture, though, we're not hearing what we need to hear.
Yeah. Yesterday, I had a situation with this. I had a conversation with somebody. It was pretty relaxed, but what came out was that this person maybe didn't feel very good as they were coming to work. And I got off the phone and I thought, that is going to be a really uncomfortable conversation, but I'm going to need to call back and let that person know that they need to turn around and go home. And that was hard. And here's what was hard. One, it was going to be hard to communicate that. And I had to go back to our values in order to do that. And in addition to that, there could have been that opportunity that this person could have canceled me out because of that, right? And so it was having that conversation, bringing it forward, and we'll talk about the tools that we're going to give you to do that. But it was hard, and as a leader, I could have been making a mistake either way. If I let this person come into the office and this grows into something that's bigger, we're a small office that could take us out for the rest of the year. Or I send that person home, nothing happens, and then that person is holding some poor feelings about that moving forward. And so that was a difficult conversation, but it was one that had to be had. So that cancel culture, you really have to take that on head on and have those conversations. And we'll talk about how to do that.
We are putting some questions out for you to look at. What we want to know: what culture conditions have you experienced? Have you experienced some of that polarizing that we're talking about, or both the cancel culture, and in the communities that you are in right now? When we're thinking about communities and the impact that this is having, it has very much the same impact as the butterfly effect. Right, and the butterfly effect says that, you know, one small little change will have an impact around the world, and we truly do not have to explain that right now because we have COVID that is giving us that. And more at the national scene, we have our racial discord and those kinds of things. So we can see the butterfly of impact or effect right now that is happening inside of our world. And when we think about that, what's happening is that we are seeing in this that we're breaking down relationships. We're seeing more about what we don't have in common than what we do have in common, which takes out the power of the relationship. When relationships are impacted and divided, then what we lose is we lose the impact of purpose. We lose the impact of meaning and significance. And so when you think about, again, I think of Jennon's answer when he said, well, why would you do what you're doing if there wasn't purpose associated with it? That's such a great question. And that is where our communities are being challenged right now. Now, again, I want to take just a pause to define what community is, okay? Community is a group of people who have a particular characteristic in common. So it's a group of people that have a particular characteristic in common. What's happening right now is most communities are experiencing the impact of change. And that's very unusual in our day-to-day living. So we have different communities that are in our life, right? We've got our family, we've got our career, we've got friends, maybe we have a health community, maybe we have some financial communities, a church community, those kinds of things. What's really interesting is that typically in life, we only have one part of our life that is experiencing change. But for all of us right now, we've been given a different type of environmental condition, which has caused all of those community areas to have the same challenges to them than we've had in past in our history.
Yeah, and it causes us, because that change is happening and it's happening at such a fast pace, it's really challenging us to, if we go to that definition, you know, it's a group of people that have a common characteristic. We have to fight really hard to keep in view what that common characteristic is.
Well, we have to keep in mind that purpose comes into play here, right? To be intentional in that, not let it happen to you, but you be a part of something positive.
Absolutely, and to be in pursuit of that. If you've been in work with us, we're constantly pushing you towards the why, right? Mm-hmm. That we have these whats that are coming at us at a very, very fast pace. And to me, I was having a conversation last night. I was like, I feel like it's coming even faster. Like, I feel like, and they're so bizarre. They're not even, you know, they're not even like closely matched together. And so how do you constantly fight that? And I was talking in particular about how I'm so tired at night. And I was like, I cannot, for some reason, I just can't shake it. And when I thought through my day, I was like, oh my gosh, I had so many whats in so many different communities that I was fighting for the why, that it takes an amount of energy that it wouldn't normally take. And so finding that commonality, so important.
Well, and taking the time to reflect on what is the current condition in your community.
Absolutely.
I, of course, and I imagine like many of you, family took on a whole different origin in these past several months, right? For us in our family, we had at one time all 6 of us under one roof. And then all of a sudden it ended up where there were just 3 of us. And that's been a lot of transition in 6 months, right? And so what is the current condition in our family environment? Well, we're dealing with that. And typically, again, an employee maybe would be dealing with that family issue, but maybe work was stable. Well, now both of those are not stable. And then a lot of us have lost the community or the relationships that we used to have that we would rely on for strength and security. We don't have those relationships anymore. Again, I love my church family. And actually, first time I got to go back to church wasn't in my church family, but I went to a church and I cried the whole time through it because I was just so impacted by being with people again in community. It looked different, but I was okay with how it looked, right? It was a different way of doing things.
And what's really cute about that is you can still go into that community with some commonality and walk out with varying decisions about mask, social distancing.
All the cultural conditions are brought right forward.
Right. You're like, wow, there you are all over again. But yes, absolutely. The comfort that comes in those. And one of the things you mentioned is having all 6 kids. You know,
I don't have 6 kids, all 4
all 4
children,
kids,
yes.
all 6 of you. Sorry.
Wow.
But with those adult children, they've experienced life through a different view, a different perspective. And so even in our varying thoughts about how to handle everything has been different. I know that's been a real interesting challenge, and probably the first, what I would say, polarity to manage inside my own family, that I would have children that would maybe not agree with the things that I would want to have moving forward. And so it's just a really interesting, again, very interesting times we find ourselves.
Well, and then let's talk more from the employee work type of place where we're challenged, right? We have people that have been wanting to get back into the office, right? Give me that environment where I can get work done. And then we have people that will never probably want to come back away from being gone. And
You'll
so
have to
again,
pull
we're
them in.
doing the polars there. And then we do know that we have everything in between. But what are those challenges right now to the relationships we have? We're going to throw a question out there for you right now where you're experiencing the most cultural conditions and what relationships. We would be really curious to see how that's working in your lives as audience members today. Now what we want to do is we want to transition you more to thinking about, okay, we know the cultural conditions, Jens, let's move on. Like, what can we do in that? We agree with you. You've spent 15 minutes telling us about that. But here's what we want to do. We want to take you back to a very simple tool to use in communication. We've talked about relationships and the power of relationships. We believe that relationships are powered by purpose. That means that they're powered by strength and intention.
Well, and that your purpose is also powered by relationships.
Absolutely.
So they really feed off of each other. In order to be on purpose for a purpose, we need each other, especially in these times when Jennon was talking about his purpose, or anybody actually, if you think about your purpose or the purpose of your organization, not very often is it absent relationship. So relationship is a really important component to that.
So what we want to talk about here is bringing back a simple tool. When we live in a polarized cultural condition in our communities and we live in a cancel culture, one of the most simple tools that we can use is what we call the commonality tool. Okay? The commonality tool is a listening first tool. What we mean by that is that we need to switch the way that we're communicating when we're in stress, which typically is talking at people a lot, to listening first. And that listening is going to require us to switch our listening from me-centered listening, where everything is impacting me, to listening to others and looking for what do we have in common.
Yeah, it's almost, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to a woman last night, and there's this careful balance of self-awareness, So we absolutely have to have self-awareness. What's been really interesting even in talking about the polarity is that you almost have two kinds of people right now. You have the people that are literally hiding, and they believe that the world is ending. And then you have, meaning there's no hope in their current circumstances. Or you have the people that are like, life is great. I couldn't be happier. It is just, things are really good. And you're like, really? Like, huh? So it's interesting because there's a careful balance in, and we've been dealing with both of these leaders. There's a careful balance in your self-awareness, and then there can be a wallowing in that self-awareness. So it's important to know where you are, and then you're looking at relationships as the tool or the balance to keep both of you healthy.
So you're listening for, back down to that, we're listening for what do we have in common with somebody. Not our first thought to what don't I have in common with them, which is polarizing, okay? But we're stopping and we're listening, we typically say you're listening to what the thoughts are that you hear that are present of somebody else, the beliefs that you hear that are present of somebody else, or just watch their actions. And can you find something in common with them? We call it the commonality tool. And we oftentimes tell people to move past first degree commonality. So we don't want you to use this simple commonality tool and go, well, you know, we both are the Jens. We both have the same first name, or we're both females, or that kind of thing. No, we want you to connect at a deeper level. Try to listen first and really understand what is the person communicating, even if it's completely opposite of what you believe. That should be a trigger. If you hear something that you go, I don't believe in that at all, you can go, oh, wait a minute, I'm contributing to the automatic polarizing culture condition. I want to be intentional in this time, so I'm going to use the commonality tool. I'm going to look for what I have in common with a person in relationship.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example of that. Last night I had a discussion with a woman whose daughter competes in the same sport that my daughter competes in. And although she was sharing something that I maybe I wouldn't necessarily have agreed with, what I tried to connect to was, I said, it is hard in this time right now. I find it also hard in this time to know what to do. So I didn't necessarily have to agree with the statement that she was presenting, but what I wanted her to know is I understand the struggle.
And you could probably hear through what she was communicating that she was struggling.
Absolutely.
And so that's a perfect example. I too am struggling through this time.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is we're listening to somebody else instead of thinking of ourselves the whole time, right? Again, when we're in a stress pattern around change, we can't help but think of ourselves. And so the intentionality, or if you will say, the purpose that we can do right now is to listen for what we have in common. And so we call that the commonality tool.
And even the scenario of yesterday with having the difficult conversation, what I did was I knew that this person valued hard work and valued being at work, that if you've taken our purpose mindset work, they're a thought thinker. And so they really value and they need to be recognized for the work that they do, especially when they're in stress. So to ask this person to turn around and go home, I knew would be a difficult conversation, because in stress, I know that is how they manage their stress. And so what I did was I said, I know how important work is to you. I too find comfort in coming to the office. But in order to come to the office and be able to do that for the rest of the fall, we need to protect everybody. So I went to what we had in common versus going to what we didn't agree on.
And that's a perfect example of creating commonality around your community. Again, if you are sitting here as a business leader and you are the voice of purpose inside of your business, bring people's attention to the common mission or the common purpose of the organization. Take it away from more of the circumstances, or we call that the what's of the world, and help create commonality of why you exist or your purpose. We all have purpose in common. And so when we're using the commonality tool, we're really working to listen to how we can bring back community to that which we have in common. And if you remember the definition from the talk today, the definition is a community is a group of people who have something particular in common. Purpose is what we all have in common, no matter what the conditions are. So the intentionality here would be to activate that commonality or that purpose in your communications. And it's a simple way, we're saying simple, but the simple also has a lot of complexity with it because we are in our automatics where we don't want to necessarily listen. So let's switch you to action here. Now, what we want you to do is we want you to think of in your community. We saw that most of you were answering that community was the challenge, the highest percentage of challenge to you. In your community, think about relationships right now. And what relationships are you most challenged by? What relationships could use the need for the commonality tool the most? How would you find out what you have in common inside of those relationships? I thought you were gonna.
I don't want to take us off the learning.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then what we want you to do is answer this question here for us. What is easiest to find in common inside of relationships? Is it easier to find entertainment in common? Is it easier to find beliefs, activity, that kind of thing? In purpose, when we're talking about being intentional with using purpose as a commonality, that is definitely belief driven. That can be difficult to start right off with. And so we put some of more of these simple, or if you will, first degree commonalities with this. But again, what we want you to do is we want you to think of the relationships that are challenging right now to find something in common with. And we want you to think about, if I could find something in common with them, what change would I see? Okay, what change would I see in that? All right. And then what we want you to do is we want you to think of then, how do I do that? Okay, how do I make a connection?
Yeah, this is where communication and engagement strategy is so important. When we went into COVID, the greatest mistake we can make as a culture is to believe that engagement no longer matters. It absolutely matters more than ever. And how we go about doing it, super important. I was listening to the news last night, the local news, and they were talking about commercial real estate downtown and how a number of businesses are going to reduce the square footage that they'll be leasing here over the next few years. And the question was posed to the real estate company. They said, you know, are you nervous about this change? And the gentleman, which I thought was brilliant, said, culture does not exist over Zoom. And I thought, right on. No kidding, right? We can have these small touches, but at the end of the day, that's going to fade. We are made for community. We are made for powerful relationships. And I'm not saying that you can't have those connections over Zoom. But what I am saying is that is a challenging statement for all of us when we're thinking about communication and engagement. When we're talking about those connections, it was a couple weeks ago, I started to listen. Now we've been we've had scattered workforces, but we're all back now because we are considered to be an essential business on the benefit side. And I heard all this, I heard people struggling, and I heard people struggling because of their clients' struggles. And I said, well, you know what? We should just connect every Friday morning and let's just talk about our struggles, whether that's personal, let's talk about our clients' struggles. And for us, faith is a big component of our community. And so we said, why are we not lifting those things up? What's causing us not to connect in that way? And so again, those meaningful connections, that commonality, and for us, the commonality was faith. Many of us share that in common here. And so we're like, why don't we figure out how to take that commonality and build community around that?
There, and truly, Jen, what you're talking about is that you did take the time to intentionally connect to the values of our community. So again, when we're talking about purpose, and we saw out of some of your answers that belief is the hardest thing to find commonality in. Please know that when you're talking about workplace, we can go right after the common mission that we have in place.
Absolutely.
Again, I was at a soccer game last night on the sidelines, and I heard two people connect that didn't realize they worked for the same company. And when they connected just on the fact that they worked for the same company, there was actually an excitement in them and talking about some of the neat things that they had in common. So again, workplace right away, because of the purpose
Absolutely.
of the place, gives people community. And so the more that we can communicate that commonality, so simple, the easier people will have in their lives and the better social and emotional well-being we'll have. So again, commonality, think of the relationships that would have a butterfly effect if we could connect them to simple commonality and get them out of themselves and with others. That is the way that we build culture or build community in a cancel culture.